Hello everyone, hope you're having a fantastic day so far, and welcome to the draft analysis for my team, the Mount Silver Mences, in the PCBL. Almost messed that up. Glad thing I didn't. In the PCBL Season 7. If you don't know what the PCBL is a draft tournament hosted by the PokeCast community, which is a kind of a large group in the all-around Pokemon community. Very cool gang. You know some of them. I battled some of them on the channel, like Probopass, Fadaki, Tangleboots. All of my really good friends are in this, so it was really nice of them to actually let me in. It's actually the 7th season, which I mentioned, which means that this league is actually up and running. It is very highly motivated, and you know, it's a very fun time all around, which is good, because I really want to have some fun with my Pokemons. Yeah, PCBL, awesome to play it. I will represent the Mount Silver Mences. It's a new team that I come up with. Unfortunately, I couldn't do the PSV Entei and stuff, but you know, Mount Silver Mences will make do of it. If you don't know the rules for the PCBL, I am not 100% sure if some other people not associated with the PCBL are watching this, but if you're not, I'll just quickly go over it before we dive right into my draft analysis. I usually don't do draft analysis, I'm more focused on the battle and team building, but I felt like this was such an exciting start of a new series or a new league that I will just quickly run through the Pokemon that I decided to pick up. But the PCBL, it is a tier and point based system where your Mega actually decides how big your budget is on your free picks. You get a certain amount of Pokemon for free, like a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. So every single tier you get one Pokemon for free, and then depending on your Mega Pokemon, you get a certain amount of points that you can spend on free picks. You need to pick up a total of 12 Pokemon, so that means 6 Pokemon will be free picks that you need to spend your points on. Of course, if you pick up a higher tier Pokemon, that means you have less budget points to spend on free picks. But if you pick up a real shitty Mega, you can draft a lot of high tier Pokemon, since that will kind of compensate each other. So that's a pretty cool system. Now, let's quickly discuss my position in the draft. I was actually placed number 12 out of 16 coaches, which means that a lot of the higher ranked Megas, in my opinion, should have already been gone. I'm talking like Mega Lopunny, I'm talking Mega Charizard. Jokes on Mega Lopunny actually went past me. Mega Lopunny, Mega Charizard, Mega Marvel was even allowed. So, you know, these really, like huge power all around amazing Pokemon, or like the top tier Megas, I thought would have actually passed me, which means that I created a draft, or I created a draft theory, which I will actually pull off. I actually managed to only get sniped once, but I created this like draft plan around a lower tier Mega, which I thought would fall to me. Also, two quick things that I want to mention before we go into the actual Mega is kind of the mindset that I had, or my strategy going into the draft, which is kind of two loopholes that I found in their draft system. So, first of all, this is a tier draft, which means that certain Pokemon will be overpriced and underpriced depending on which, of course, which commissioner you have, but also which person you speak to. Some Pokemon might not be as valuable in certain people's eyes, but a lot more valuable in other people's eyes. So I tried to take advantage of this, finding some Pokemon, especially one Pokemon that you'll see later down the road, but I tried to find some Pokemon that I found pretty underpriced, which I can pick up very cheap and then use very well. So yeah, that was the first thing. And the second thing is that the PCBL allows every single Pokemon, except your Mega of course, which carries a Mega Stone, but every other Pokemon has the ability to carry a Z Crystal, which is absolutely game-changing and busted. And that means that I want to pick up a lot of good Z Crystal users, so I can just be so versatile when it comes to C usage. I can use this Pokemon week 1, and then the next time I can use this Pokemon, and I can just switch around all the times, and my opponent will be very, very confused. But that's enough rambling. Let's go right into the Mega that we will use for PCBL Season 7. So the first Pokemon that the Mount Silver Mences decided to pick up, and the Mega for the squad this season, will be Mega Aerodactyl, which is a tier 2 Mega, which gives me 95 points in my budget to spend on some free picks, which is actually a lot. So, you know, Mega Aerodactyl as a tier 2 Pokemon is, in my opinion, a steal. I think this is a very cool Pokemon. I've been dying to try this out. So let's talk a little bit about why it is good. First of all, it is one of, if not the fastest Pokemon in the entire metagame. And, you know, I think Ninjas is a little bit faster, but you know, Megadoctyl has some things that Ninjas cannot do. So yeah, absolute Megadoctyl is amazing in that regard. I can run pretty much Adamant every single week and even outspeed some Scarfers. Base 150 speed is absolutely insane. You know, it is just outspeeding everything. If you don't have, I think, a base 90 Pokemon as a choice Scarfer, Megadoctyl will outspeed it naturally, which is insane. So this gives me right off the bat a really, really good speed here, and even a revenge killer for some of the Pokemon that actually want to set up speed. So that's pretty good, and it's actually quite offensively scary as well. It has limited coverage, but it does have workable coverage. And it does have access to the Tough Claws ability, which will boost its physical contact moves, and base 135 is nothing to laugh at. It is very hard for offensive teams to deal with, because, you know, it is so fast and so strong, and you can even run some bulk with that, because, you know, it's so fast. So, yeah, it's definitely hard to take down for offensive teams, and, you know, one it KO a lot of things, especially with some chip damage. So, the PCBL decided to place this Pokemon in Tier 2, which is, in my opinion, a bit too generous, because I do think that Megadoctyl can be a top tier threat if used properly, but the thing is, I do not really think that people tend to use it to its fullest potential, because what people tend to do is just slap on a bunch of coverage moves, maybe occasionally slap on the roost and the home claws, but usually they try to wall break with this thing. But this is not a wall breaker. I'll get into my wall breaker later on. You'll see that in just a minute. But this Pokemon is more of an offensive killer. It can function as a very good, bulky, supportive Pokemon as well, which people don't really use too much. Mainly due to the fact that they think that Megadoctyl is more of an offensive Pokemon. This can function both ways, and I want to show the versatility of Aerodactyl this season. One of my goals, actually, is to try to bump this up to Tier 1 Mega, because I do think it has the potential, mainly due to its good typing. Rock and Flying is absolutely amazing, both from an offensive and a defensive side of view. Yes, it does have a lot of weaknesses, but I think that it resists, it actually takes on very well. Stuff like Flying types and Fire types, who are usually pretty offensive, this Pokemon can take it on without a problem. With access to Roost, base, I think it is like 80 somewhere, I don't have it up on the screen, but base 80 something is actually very good for a defensive or a bulkier Pokemon, so this can actually take a lot of hits, which I do not really see people utilizing its bulk, so I definitely want to try and do that. Of course, it does have access to the Defog. It's not a very good Defog, but it does have access to the Defog, and of course it is a Stealth Rocker, so this Pokemon is a very good round 1 pick in my opinion, and definitely something that shouldn't be slept on. So I talked a little bit about Mega Aerodactyl's ability to break offensive teams, but of course we have the other side of the spectrum, which is the defensive teams, which we need a Pokemon that can just single-handedly just 6-0 a defensive squad, and I do think that I picked up just the right Pokemon for that. My next pick will actually be a good friend of mine, or else, well, you know, a Pokemon that I've used in the past to great success, which is Kyurem Black. The balance killer himself is back to me, and this Pokemon is something that I love to use. Kyurem Black is a big threat and a top tier Tier 1 Pokemon. I talked a little bit about Pokemon being like misplaced in the tiers and stuff like that. This is a top tier Tier 1 Pokemon. I'm so glad that I got it paired up with Mega Aerodactyl, because this thing breaks every single wall. It is not a lot of Pokemon that can switch in safely on a Kyurem Black. Of course, it is an offensive Ice type, which many Team Lacks resist to. It does have access to the Fusion Bolt, so you know, can break even those water types coming in. It is a Dragon type, so I start the Fire Water Grass Core. Wow, that's a later problem. I start the Fairy Dragon Steel Core right away with my Kyurem Black, and just this Pokemon is everything you can wish for in a wall breaker. It is semi-fast at base 95 speed, so not the fastest Pokemon, but it's not really meant to be a speedy sweeper. This is more meant to be a Pokemon that, holy shit, this Pokemon just got a free switch in, now I need to find a sacrifice, and just weakening Pokemon enough in range of Aerodactyl will be good enough. But Kyurem Black, amazing Z Crystal user, so I already picked up a really, really good Z Pokemon that can just utilize the Z crystals very well. Z free shock is just something that is gonna one-hit KO something. You don't really have a switch into that. Even the most defensive Pokemon takes like 90% and you just finish it off with like a Dragon Claw or an Ice Beam or something like that. This Pokemon is of course very versatile in the fact that it can go either offensive from the special side or from the physical side. You know, base 170 is absolutely insane. Even without any investment, this thing hits almost 400 attack, which is incredible. There's not a lot of Pokemon that can do what Kyurem Black does. So, you know, I already have a very fast Pokemon, a very offensive Pokemon, and the thing with Kyurem Black is kind of the same thing with Mega Aerodactyl, which is why I love this thing. It does have very underrated bulk. Base 125 HP coupled with base 100 defense and base 90 special defense makes this thing very bulky and way bulkier than people give it credit for. The typing is not the best, but from a defensive side of view, of course. But it does have access to Roost. It does have access to like Toxic Sub, which not a lot of Pokemon actually can break. I've used this Pokemon as a physical defensive tank, a special defensive tank, a mixed tank, a offensive tank. I've used this Pokemon in so many ways. I do think Kyurem Black might be one of the best Pokemon in draft play, and I'm so excited to have this back on my team. So looking at the team right now, we do have the Kyurem Black and the Mega Aerodactyl, two very good offensive Pokemon who cover each other pretty well, but at this moment we don't really have a defensive backbone, and we do not really have hazard support. We can, as you can see, Kyurem Black, Aerodactyl, two Pokemon that does not enjoy switching in on rocks. So of course we do need to pick up a solid defogger, and those tend to go pretty fast, so I actually want to pick up one right now. And even though Envy has started this trend with Empoleon being the best defogger, I still argue that Tapu Fini, my next pick, is the best defogger in the game. Tapu Fini is an absolutely fantastic Pokemon in general, and it's so good at removing those rocks. Of course, it is quite fast. It is quite bulky, so it can take always like 2 or 3 hits. It defogs away the Stealth Rocks. It actually beats the most common Stealth Rockers in the game, stuff like ground types, rock types, even some steel types. Tapu Fini can actually beat just because it is so damn bulky. Tapu Fini also gives me a Fairy type for the Dragon Fairy Steel Core, and a Water type for the start of a Water Fire Grass Core, which is quite good. So, you know, Tapu Fini, a great addition to the team at this moment. So one of the things you can do, it is definitely a good stall killer, because, you know, the Taunt Nature's Madness combo is actually quite efficient for chipping down my opponent, putting them in range of the Aerodactyl if I really need to. And, you know, Tapu Fini is quite good as just being a status remover as well, or status like blocker, because, you know, it sets up that misty terrain, and of course it will weaken the damage from Kyurem Black's dragon type attacks, but in my opinion Kyurem Black is an absolutely fantastic Pokemon to have under misty terrain, because one of the main ways you can deal with it is just paralyzing it, or status it, or burn it, poison it maybe, I don't know, freeze it. I can't do that because it's an ice type, but Kyurem Black under misty terrain will actually be able to take a bunch of dragon type hits, and since it doesn't rely as heavily on Dragon Stab as other dragons do, like Garchomp or Hydreigon, it is actually a very good Misty Terrain abuser, in my opinion. Don't ask me about this, but I do think Kyurem Black is one of the better Misty Terrain abusers. But Tapu Fini can also be offensive if I need to. It does have some, like, semi-good offensive stats. 95 special attack is nothing to really laugh at. With a Calm Mind up, with the choice specs, this Pokemon can actually do a lot of damage, and the Water Fairy type is actually quite good from an offensive side of view, so don't sleep on offensive Tapu Fini. That might just be brought 1 or 2 times, but overall, defensive support, Fairy type, and just Misty Terrain support will be awesome for my squad. So, moving into round 4, we do have a pretty stacked team already, which is why I decided to pull the trigger on a Pokemon that I scouted out even before the draft started. And this is, in my opinion, the biggest tiering mistake that the PCBL did for Season 7. And I was actually quite triggered when I saw this Pokemon was Tier 3. I felt a little salt running through my veins, you know, regular stuff, when you see a Pokemon being so underwhelmed that this actually was. This was actually the MVP for my GPC Championship run. It carried me through the entire playoffs. It got like 8 or something kills. It came as a new set every single game, and it performed so well. I know the raw strength of this Pokemon. Well, Bill first presented it to me, and he said he wanted to pick it up for P4G. I'm gonna try and do an Australian accent like, bro, I'm gonna pick this Pokemon up and it's gonna be awesome. I actually did not believe him, but after using this Pokemon, I can actually say that this is one of the top tier threats that I've ever tried out. And that Pokemon, the tier 3, it still hurts me to say, the tier 3 pick that I decided to pick up is Reuniclus. Reuniclus is amazing in so many levels, and don't ask me about this, but I do think this is actually the best psychic type in the game, not like including stuff like Tapu Lele and stuff like that, but this Pokemon is beyond versatile when it comes to being an offensive or a defensive threat, coming as a support or like a straight up hyper offensive set, because it can do so much. And I don't think people actually realize that. I showcased a bunch of sets in my GPC run. I think Reuniclus did absolutely great. It was the top killer in the playoffs, and it just did wonders for me. It has a lot of bulk with base 110 HP, 75 defense and 85 special defense, which means that it can tank some hits. It does have great abilities in Magikarp and Regenerator. Mainly Overcoat can also be used if I face something like a Spore Pokemon or something like that, but mainly Magikarp and Regenerator is the way to go. Magikarp blocks status and life or recall, which is the main two things that I am looking forward to. I can do Calm Mind versions of Reuniclus, I can do status versions of Reuniclus, I can do like lure type versions of Reuniclus because it does have such a versatile move pool. It doesn't have like the widest move pool, but it does have just the right things that it needs. Of course, Regenerator is an awesome ability. I love it. I usually tend to have like 1 or 2 Pokemon with Regenerator on my team, and Reuniclus is a top tier Pokemon with that ability. I can just switch in, take some hits, switch out, come back in, and I can just repeat the cycle over and over and over. I think this Pokemon is very underrated in the PCBL. I do hope that I can actually show the true potential of Reuniclus. MVP will actually be the nickname. I know I used to name this Project 46, but it has to be MVP. Reuniclus is it's so good, and I really hope I get to showcase that and maybe even bump it up to tier 2. But yeah, glad to pick this up. I know I picked it up quite early, but I did not want to let it slip through my fingers. So I have no regrets. Reuniclus is on the squad. I am super excited. Let's move on to round number 5. So, moving into round number 5, I decided to pick up maybe the best Kyurem Black partner in the entire game. This Pokemon will break stuff that Kyurem Black does not want to break on its own. This Pokemon will deal with offensive Pokemon that Kyurem Black does not want to deal with. And this Pokemon will grant Kyurem Black free switch-ins with its great U-turn and pivoting momentum gaining. So, you know, Kyurem Black absolutely love those free switch-ins, and this Pokemon will grant Kyurem Black just that. And that Pokemon, ladies and gentlemen, is actually Thunderous Therian form, which is a Pokemon that I did not expect to get in round number 5, because this Pokemon usually goes in round 1 or round 2, due to the fact that people know that this Pokemon is an absolute menace to deal with on the opposite side of the field. Base 145 is ridiculous on a Pokemon that actually just spams Volt Switch and Thunderbolt all over your opposing side of the field, and usually the Pokemon that wants to switch in on a Thunders is Grass or Ground types, and I can Volt Switch on both of those and bring out the Kyurem. And now you might be sitting there thinking like, how the hell is Strompfel supposed to Volt Switch on a Ground type? Well, Jokes on you, Thundurus actually gets access to the U-turn, which makes it one of the best pivots in the entire game, because U-turning or Volt Switching on a grass or ground type will grant Kyurem a free switch in, and now look at your Ice Beam resist, they don't really exist that well. Thundurus is also a Pokemon with a very good speed tier as base 101, which means that it outspeeds all the base 100 Pokemon with 1 base speed tier, which makes this Pokemon an excellent choice Scarfer to either revenge kill or gain momentum for my team. It does have a great move pool as well. You can just take a look at something like setup options like Nasty Plots or Agility if you want to sweep on its own, because you know this is another Pokemon that has amazing coverage for Z Crystal or amazing abuse of Z Crystal, so I already have 2 of those. I didn't really go into Reuniclus, but Reuniclus can use them if you really need to. But yeah, this Pokemon can definitely sweep on its own, but it does have some great coverage for most teams, like Psychic for the Poison type or the fat grass types are usually are poison as well. It can have like Hidden Powers, of course, and it doesn't have the best flying stab, but Hidden Power Flying is a valid option if you really want to. Of course, U-turn and Volt Switch are already discussed. Thunderbolts hits like a nuke, an absolute nuke. One of the things that I actually wanted to pick up Thundurus for, of course, you know, Thundurus Incarnate was actually on the board while I picked up Thundurus Therian instead, is mainly because of the fact that this Pokemon actually gets access to the Volt Switch, which makes it a very good Pokemon to switch in on those electric type attacks, which my team kind of lacks at the moment. We have Kyurem Black that can switch in on electric type attacks, but you know, Kyurem Black is not supposed to be your main electric resist on his team, so it's nice to have an immunity as well. This also gives me a second ground immunity coupled with Mega Aerodactyl, so I do already kind of stack the typings, but you know, I do think that this Pokemon was just so good to pass up on. So yeah, welcome Thundurus to the squad. I really have high expectations for you. So, since I just picked up a offensive pivot in my Thundurus, I decided it might be time to go with a defensive pivot in round 6 to assist my Reuniclus and my Tapu Fini, which can do the role absolutely fine, but I just don't want to lock them into a defensive role already in the team crafting. So I decided it might be time to pick up some more bulk. So when the wheel comes around, I decided to pick up another member that I had in the GPC team, a Pokemon that I absolutely loved using and that forms an amazing regenerator core with my Reuniclus. So I am proud to present that the Pokemon that will join us in round 6 is going to be Amoonguss, and I am so glad that I got this Pokemon again. I was pretty scared that it actually would get sniped, but luckily for us it did not happen. So yeah, Amoonguss is so much fun to use, mainly due to the fact that this Pokemon is so annoying for your opponent, and you need to prepare for it accordingly. Otherwise, it will just either sit in front of you, it will switch out, regen all its health, and you will just not be able to take it down, or it will put everything to sleep, and you will not be able to do anything. So yeah, Amoonguss is an absolute beast of a Pokemon, and many people underestimate this thing and don't think it's that bulky, but oh boy, are they mistaken. This Shroom never dies if not hit by a super effective move. It's just that. Well, maybe if you like Swords Dance twice or something and Amoonguss comes in, maybe then you'll be able to take it out. But Amoonguss is actually very good for the squad. I really needed this Pokemon. First of all, it is a grass type, of course. You know, it's a Shroom. Obviously, it's a grass type, but that gives me another part of the Fire Water Grass core that I have going on with my Tapu Fini. So all I need now is actually a Fire type, and that core will be completed. It is also a Poison type, and moreover, it's actually a grounded Poison type. Because I was a little bit scared of people trying to T-spike my team, because you know I have a kind of a thing of running like bulkier sub-Kyurems. Of course, Tapu Fini, it's grounded, Reuniclus can't be poisoned, but you know I didn't want the rest of my team being poisoned by T-spikes, so Amoonguss being able to just remove those ASAP is actually very good. Regen core with my Reuniclus will be hard to take down. I've shown that in the past, and it actually gives me some key resistances that I didn't already have with my Pokemon, mainly to the Fairy type. Fairy is, of course, a very good offensive typing, and I did not have a resist to it already. And Amoonguss is a very good Fairy response. It can switch in on most attacks, like unstabbed super effective attacks like Psy Shocks from Sylveon, or I don't know, if Floor just gets like Psy Shock or something. That will not actually deal with with Among Us that well, so Among Us will just be able to sit in front of them, sludge bomb them, spore them, whatever it wants to do. It can also deter setup with the clear smog, and it does have some other tricks up its sleeves, which I will not reveal in this video because I might need to use them later on. But I am very glad that I got Among Us back, and yeah, our team is looking very stacked now, halfway through the draft. I really am liking the way it looks, with the speed chairs lining up, with the typings lined up, with the cores lining up, and with the offensive and defensive support that the team actually gives. So I'm very excited to move into round 7 and continue this draft. So moving into round number 7, we do still have some unfinished cores to finish up, being the Dragon Fairy Steel core and the Fire Water Grass core. And since every team needs a solid steel typing on their roster, I thought it would be about time to pick up a steel type. So, you know, just finish up the Fairy Dragon Steel core, move on with a life, and feel done with it. It would just feel so much better for me, at least. So, you know, there was a steel type just sitting there in tier 2 waiting for me to pick it up, and I thought it would be a crime to pass on in round 7 from Cobalion. Cobalion is a dear old friend of mine. I had it in GPC. I know I'm just copying the GPC of the team at this point, but Cobalion is just so great that I couldn't really pass up on it. And especially in round 7, I did not think it would fall this far, but I just sniped it up. Cobalion is now on the Mount Silver Mences once again, but this finishes off our Dragon Fairy Steel core. It also gives me a fighting type and a Pokemon with Justified, which means that this is actually a very good switch into steel types to dark types, which Reuniclus needs. Just switch it in, take a Dark Pulse or a knockoff. Justify will boost our attack, and Cobalion can actually do some solid damage back. This of course gives us another stealth rocker. Cobalion has some good speed at base 108, filling in that speed gap that we had between Aerodactyl and the Thunderous Therian. Of course, there is a giant speed gap between Aero and Cobalion, but we'll deal with that later on. At the moment, we're just happy that Cobalion has a decent enough speed here. Dark Spam is, of course, I just mentioned that. Dark Spam is no longer an option for my opponent, since Cobalion will be a giant threat. And Cobalion can actually set up and become a giant threat either way, because it does have the Rock Polish and the Sword Stance, and it is a absolutely fantastic C-move user once again. Just scooped up another one. So now we have 3 in Kyurem, Cobalion, and the Thunderous Therian, who can just set up and just smack our opponent. And if you don't believe me that Cobalion is a good Z-Crystal user, you might look at the stat feeling that this Pokemon is a bit lackluster, but just click on the UU crate, whatever team you want, and you will face off against Cobalion within 3 games. I can guarantee you that, and you will be able to lose at least 2 Pokemon to a Z-move Cobalion. Cobalion is just very good with the Z-moves. Of course, if you look at the stats, Cobalion is kind of middle Pokemon, you know, it's like one stat that sticks out from the rest. Defense is really good, so I can run this more bulky if I want to, but I can also run this specially or physically attacking, depending on which matchup I have, and even the special defense can be worked on with some investment. So Cobalion is an all-around good Pokemon, and I'm very happy to have it back on my team. So if you do remember me talking about snipes during the introduction, you will remember that I said that I only got sniped once. And this Pokemon was actually it, unfortunately. I originally wanted another Pokemon over the Pokemon that I ended up getting, but you know, someone else got to it first, and that's the name of the game. Quite unfortunate, but you know, we'll have to deal with it. Because I sat down, I recalculated, I rethinked some stuff, and it actually ended up planning out pretty well, as you will see in just a minute. Since you know I didn't get the Pokemon I wanted, I decided to finish off the Fire Water Grass core that I had started with the Tapu Fini and the Mungus. And I decided to pick up a good Pokemon that I have used in the past as well. This was actually a Pokemon that I used in the CKBL, which is a league I did not decide to upload with, but it actually it performed pretty well. It actually got 26 kills and only died once in a meme battle versus my man Luke. So it is quite a behemoth, and you know, even the OU tier thinks that this Pokemon is absolutely insane. It actually forces pretty much every single team to run a Choice Scarfer over base 100 speed, and I do think you know where I'm going with this, because my next pick, round 8 pick, will be the tier 1 Pokemon Volcarona. So Volcarona, where do I even begin with this thing? Look at the stats at the bottom left of your corner. Holy hell, this Pokemon has some great stats. With that nice base 80 plus base, what is it? Hold on, like Base 85 HP and base 105 special defense. This is so tanky. And base 135 special attack is absolutely insane. This Pokemon will dish out some serious damage to its opponents. And base 100 speed is actually quite nice for my team because right now I do have Kyurem at base 95 and the Thundy at base 101, but the base 100 kind of lines up pretty well there because all the base 100s that originally had to speed creep my Kyurem now has to run max speed in order to speed tie with the Volcarona. If you don't do that, give Volcarona that free setup, you will just pretty much lose. And speaking of setup, Volcarona gets access to the absolutely broken move in the Quiver Dance, which raises your special attack, special defense, and speed. As you can see, it's 3 high stats all the way through the roof, and this Pokemon becomes incredibly hard to deal with. Especially when you get access to the Z Crystals. As you can see, another Pokemon on my team that can utilize Z Crystals quite well. Volcarona has some coverage in like Psychic, it has Hidden Power, of course, you can't really use Z Crystals with that, but Z Fire Blast or Z Bug Buzz are incredibly hard to switch into, so this Pokemon is an absolute behemoth if you want to use it offensively, but it can be used defensively, mainly on the special side because it of course gets access to the Roost, and it does have some decent bulk on the special side, so switching in on those attacks, Roost off the damage, and actually do a lot of damage with the unboosted attacks is nothing to really laugh at. So Volcarona is an absolute monster, not as good in a draft as it is in standard play, but still an absolute monster that people have to pay respects to. If you don't, you will get blown back by this thing. So, moving into round 9 is a Pokemon that I'm honestly super excited to try out, since I've seen talented players like Joel from the Tolkien Minorities and Gypsy King use this Pokemon to great success, so I want to see if I can use it as well as they can. And it is a Dark type, which I desperately need at this point, so it pretty much fits all my criterias. It checks all my boxes and all the other metaphors that I can come up with. But I want to give a warm welcome to Alolan Persian on my squad. Of course, it is a Dark type with the Alolan form, which my team desperately needs, as I said. Dark type helps out the Reuniclus, since you know I can switch in on other Dark types, but I can also deal with other Psychic types, which is very usable for me at this moment. It has a nice base 115 speed, which is a lot. It actually helps me with the speed gap once again that I started with the Cobalions. Now the speed gap is between Alolan Persian and Mega Aerodactyl, which is still quite a bit, but you know, it's better than before. So now we have Alolan Persian 115, then we have Cobalion 18, and then we have Thundy at base 101. So it's quite nice how the speed tiers line up at this point. I'm quite excited to try this out, but the main name of the game for Alolan Persian is to be annoying to your opponent. It does have access to the Parting Shot, which is a great move, which I've actually never tried out in draft, like once or twice maybe, but not like full out for a full season. Parting Shot, of course, lowers your opponent's attack and special attack and allows you to switch out into another Pokemon, mainly giving you switch advantage, or it can actually lower your opponent's attacking power in order for your offense to switch in and be just assert offensive presence, or your defense to switch in and just heal, which is quite helpful, I'm not gonna lie. It is of course paired up very well with the Z Crystal, so yet another Z Crystal abuser, because Z Parting Shot actually heals up a Pokemon to full, helping out stuff like my top Afeni who doesn't have a reliable recovery, etc. But Persian Alola is also very annoying to an opposing draft, which, you know, Taunt and Toxic and Foul Play, doesn't have to run like offensive stats to use Foul Play accordingly. And then we do have the Knockoff, and it probably has some other stuff that I can't think about right now, but Persian Alola is very annoying, and it has two really good abilities in Fur Coat, which halves all the damage done to it by contacting moves, which means that it can be quite bulky on the physical side, and also Technician, which is quite underrated in my opinion, because this Pokemon does get access to the Nasty Plot, which means that it can actually double its special attack and then fire off some pretty good hits. It is quite hard to set up, and it's quite a meme in my opinion, but it can be pretty efficient if used properly. So this Pokemon can actually be quite good in my opinion if used correctly. So Persian Alola will be a great addition to the team, and I'm honestly very excited about this Pokemon. So we still do need to pick up 3 more Pokemon before the draft is complete. And even though the fun part is over, you know, where you pick up a bunch of broken Pokemon, toss them all together on a team and brag about it, you know, we do still need to pick up these lower tier Pokemon in order for a draft to become really, really good. And, you know, some Pokemon in the lower tiers can actually be like gold picks where you bring like 4 or 5 times and actually put in massive amounts of work. So we're definitely aiming to pick up one of those. And if you look at my draft, I actually miss a certain typing that you usually want to pick up in order to not get Volt Switch spam, which is actually a ground type. Almost said electric type, but you need a ground type on your draft, otherwise you will just get Volt Switch spammed, and that will be no bueno at all. Getting Volt Switch spammed is actually the worst thing that can happen to you. Well, worst thing is losing, but second worst thing is actually getting Volt Switch spammed. So, you know, you want to have a ground type to switch into those attack. Of course, I do have an electric immunity in my Thunders, but I don't want to have my Thunder switching into every single attack there is from an electric type, because, you know, hidden powers exist and stuff like that. So, having a solid ground type is actually very, very valuable. And I thought, since, you know, I need to pick up some tier 5 picks, might as well just scoop up a ground type right now. And since I need a ground type, I thought that would give me the perfect excuse to draft a Pancake. I mean, draft Stunfisk. I've always wanted to try out Stunfisk. Stunfisk seems to be really, really fun. When you face off against it, it's actually quite annoying. It can be very bulky, as you can see on your bottom right corner. Base 109 HP coupled with 99 speed F and 84 defense is actually quite bulky, and this Pokemon can set off my rocks. It can definitely spread some paralysis, since you know it has the static ability. It's also my second electric type, but you know, Thunderous and Stunfisk doesn't share that many weaknesses, actually only ice, so I'm totally fine with that. But it can set off my rocks, it can definitely spread some paralysis, it can be quite fat and annoying, and you know, this Pokemon is the Lord himself. It is incredibly derpy, that, you know, if you just look at it, you will actually lose a brain cell and hopefully a Pokemon as well. And if you step on it, you might get paralyzed with the static ability. So, you know, all good in the hood. Stunfisk will be a great addition to the squad, and actually quite excited to try this Pokemon out. So, second to last pick, round 11, and I thought I would actually speed this part up because, you know, this Pokemon isn't very exciting in my opinion, and I've been talking for way longer than I thought, so might as well just speed this up just a tiny bit. But in round 11, I actually decided to pick up another tier 5 Pokemon. You know, spoiler alert, all my next picks, or this and my next pick, will actually be tier 5 Pokemon, but rather than just wasting time, I'll just go right into why I picked up Pyukumuku. Now, originally I wanted another Pokemon for this, but, you know, I don't really call that a snipe, so I thought it would be gone by the time I wanted to pick up that Pokemon, but you know, whatever. If it floats my boat, I don't really care, and I move on with my life. But Pyukumuku, it's actually quite a fun Pokemon. If you don't have Taunt, this can actually be quite annoying. It does have reliable recovery. It is quite a bulky water type, second one on the team. It can do stuff, I guess. It has 2 cool abilities in Innards Out, which means that if you KO this Pokemon from around, say, 50% and you have like 200 HP left, you will actually take away 200 HP from the opposing Pokemon, which is quite good. You know, Pyukumuku can actually be quite annoying in that aspect. You know, you don't really want to KO it because you don't want to take the recall and stuff like that. It does also have unaware, so it kind of is an unaware wall. Not really, because, you know, it doesn't do anything. If you have Taunt, this Pokemon is basically shut down. It only has status moves, which is quite cool, but it does have some usage which I can definitely try and play around with if I want to. Like, it can baton pass, it can set up screens, it can soak and actually toxic Pokemon, it can block them in so they can't spit out. It's definitely something you can do with this Pokemon, so it's not like dead weight or anything. I actually think that people might undervalue this Pokemon, and then it comes and it actually puts in a lot of work, so who knows. I think this can be quite cool. But yeah, Pyukumuku will be on the squad, and moving into round 12, which actually is a lot more exciting than people might think. Because in round 12, I actually decided to pick up a Pokemon that I am more excited about than any other Pokemon on my entire draft. And people thought this was a mean pick, but I am dead serious when I say that Munchlax is going to be a big threat this season. My boy, Aaron 2420, hunting for those donuts. Just kidding, Aaron is not small or fat, but you know, he is hunting for those donuts, he is loving them, so I decided to name my Munchlax after him. But, you know, Munchlax, let's talk a little bit about it. And literal is the name because it's actually quite a small Pokemon. But first thing first, this Pokemon is so fucking cute that you just want to hug it. It's kind of weird, it kind of seems like it is like guilty, I'd say, but it's kind of tired as well. But I think it's incredibly adorable, which is one reason why I pick it up. And the second thing is actually its viability. I do think Munchlax actually has viability in draft play. Snorlax has great viability in draft play, and you might say, well, that's because figure recycle, but you know, Snorlax was really valuable even before that was a thing, so I think Munchlax can perform the same role. I do need a normal type on my draft, and with thick fat, I do also have a fire resist and a ice resist, which is kind of good. And with an Eviolite, base 135 HP coupled with those defenses can be incredibly bulky, and not a lot of Pokemon can actually shut this down. Base 85 attack is not bad at all. It can actually do some damage, especially if you curse up with this Pokemon and do the Snorlax thing. You can also status Pokemon, and they can't really kill you because, you know, those stats are not to be taken lightly. Munchlax can actually be a pretty big threat to some teams, and it's kind of hard to say that Munchlax can be a big threat and just look at it, and that kind of invalidates my point, because it kind of looks very weird, and you know, it's kind of cute at the same time. But Munchlax is actually a Pokemon that I'm very excited to try out. I do think it can kind of perform the same role as a Snorlax, but a little bit worse, of course. It's tier 5 Pokemon, but for being a tier 5 Pokemon, I do think that people should not sleep on this. I've seen some drafts that I'm going to face this season. I've actually seen Munchlax being a very potent threat towards those drafts, so yeah, look out for Munchlax, people. Munchlax will come in clutch this season, I'm telling you. My boy Aaron2420 is out for those donuts, and those donuts are the winning prize for winning the battle. So yeah, Munchlax will be the last member for the Mount Silver Mences in PCBL 7. Looking at the draft right now, I am actually quite happy with how my team actually turned out. I usually see a lot of like weaknesses in my draft, and I do see that with this as well, but I tend to see like more weaknesses with other drafts I pick up, so this is a good thing in my opinion. I do not see that many weaknesses I have. Of course there's some, and I'm not going to point all of them out, but one obvious is of course that I know people are going to mention this, but one obvious is of course that I do have a lot of Stealth Rock weaknesses, and I do only have Afeni as a reliable defogger or hazard support, but with Aerodactyl and Volcarona and even Thundurus as a defogger, well, potential defoggers, they don't really want to carry defog, but you know, they can if needed be, and since I do have Stealth Rock's weakness, they might just have to carry it some weeks in order for me not to get hazard stacked, which would suck. So yeah, I do have some hazard supports, and I do also have a lot of speedy Pokemon with the ability to taunt my opponent, like Persian, like Arrow, and like Cobalion. So I do think I can actually handle rocks. Or my opponent's rocks. I can actually set up my own rocks with a bunch of Pokemon, but my opponent's rocks will be way worse to deal with, so you know, I can definitely taunt them, I can defog them away. I do feel like I am set in that aspect, but my speed tiers line up with Arrow, then Arrow at 150, and then Persian at 115, Cobalion 108, Thundy at 101, and then we do have the Volcarona base 100, Curan Black 95, and Afeni 85, which is all the speed tiers I really need, and then it is a giant speed gap all the way to like base 30, which is, might say not the best, but you know, we can definitely do with it. And then, of course, I do feel like my team can perform both offensively and defensively if I needed to, which is kind of what I aimed for. It's definitely my style to try and play both offensively and defensively. More bulky offense, which I am very good at. Just switching the Pokemon, recovering, dish out some damage, ship down my opponent, then switch in my win con, which I do really... I see a lot of win cons on my draft, which is very good. Usually I tend to draft teams without, like, potent win cons, but I do think I can actually make a bunch of different win cons, like Curse Munchlax can be 1 week, I can have a Spec Stunfisk next week. Well, I'm not going to do that, but you know, Technician, Life Orb, Nasty Plot, Roland Persian can be another one. So, you know, I do think I have these like win cons or these hidden win cons, I'd say, that people will not prep for as much, since I do have these offensive threats in like Kuram and Reuniclus and Mega Aerodactyl. So I do think I have a very versatile draft in that aspect, but let me know what you think about my draft and how I did. Of course, I think the PCBL actually starts tomorrow for you, because tomorrow will actually... the team builder will actually go up tomorrow for my week 1 opponent with this draft. So yeah, that will be a lot of excitement, of course. But let me know what you thought about my draft and what I might need to change up later down the road. But yeah, if you actually stuck around to the end, I want to thank you so much. I've been rambling for... I don't even know how long. I'm probably gonna know while I start editing this. But yeah, thank you so much for sticking through. This has been your host, Strompfel, coach of the Mences, and yeah, I'll see you around. Goodbye.